Welcome back to the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast, a weekly podcast where we look at history and development of a different video game each and every week. I'm your host, RxDude22. This is Season 2 of the podcast where we're exploring all the games being used in Season 7 of the Retro Gaming League. The Retro Gaming League is a competitive, fun, challenging league on Facebook where pages come together and compete each week in a different retro video game. This week's game is a classic cartoon that first ported to the NES in the early 90s. We're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for episode 18 of the podcast. Let's get right to it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, known as Geki Kami Ninja Den in Japan, and Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles in Europe, is a 1989 side-scrolling action platform game for the Nintendo Entertainment System released by Konami. In North America, it was published under Konami's Ultra Games imprint in the US and the equivalent Palcom brand in Europe and Australia. Alongside the arcade game, also developed by Konami, it was one of the first video games based on the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series, being released after the show's second season. The game sold more than 4 million cartridges worldwide. Plot of the game. Shredder kidnaps April and gains the Life Transformer gun, a weapon capable of returning Splinter to his human form. In order to save April, the Turtles, Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael, embark on the streets of New York to confront the Foot Clan. While traversing the sewers, the Turtles encounter Bebop, a mutated pig, and Rocksteady, a mutant rhino. Though the Turtles defeat Bebop, Rocksteady escapes with April O'Neil. The Turtles then chase Rocksteady to an abandoned warehouse, fight him, and rescue April. After disabling bombs in the Hudson River Dam, Shredder captures Splinter, so the Turtles give chase in the party wagon. Hot in pursuit, the Turtles scour the city and eventually find that Splinter is held captive by the robotic Mecha Turtle on a skyscraper rooftop. After the Turtles save Splinter, Shredder escapes in a helicopter. The Turtles give chase, tracking him to the JFK airport, where they encounter Big Mouser. After defeating Big Mouser, the Turtles head to Shredder's secret Foot Clan base in the South Bronx via the Turtle Blimp. Once there, they locate and battle the Technodrome underground. The Turtles descend into the Technodrome's reactor and ultimately defeat Shredder. With the Life Transformer gun, the Turtles help Splinter return to his human form. With the tough mission accomplished, the Turtles and April celebrate with a pizza. Gameplay. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a single-player action game. The player starts the game as Leonardo, but can switch to any of the other Turtles by pressing the Start button and accessing the information screen. The information screen shows each Turtle's health, special weapons, a map grid of the current area, and messages from either Splinter or April. Each primary weapon has a different speed, power, and reach. Thus, during gameplay, certain Turtles may be more adept at defeating certain enemies and navigating particular obstacles than others. When a Turtle runs out of health, falls into a fatal trap, or is struck by a roller car, the Foot Clan captures the Turtle and holds him in an undisclosed location. This forces the player to choose one of the remaining Turtles in order to continue. The player loses the game when all 4 Turtles are captured. From Stage 3 onward, a captured Turtle may be rescued once per each area of the gameplay. Overall, 6 missions comprise the game. 1. Streets of New York. 2. Hudson River Dam. 3. Wall Street Rooftops. 4. JFK Airport. 5. South Bronx, Lair. And 6. Technodrome. Initially, a player navigates the mission map in an overhead view. When a Turtle enters a sewer or building interior, the gameplay switches to a side-scrolling perspective. While in the overhead view, a player can move in 4 cardinal directions and use primary weapons for a single type of attack. As the game progresses, more lethal and numerous enemies appear. In later stages, obstacles include gaps that involve well-timed jumps and inaccessible areas that require specialty items such as ropes to progress across building rooftops. In side-scrolling portions of the game, the Turtles jump, crouch, and attack with primary or alternative weapons. Alternate weapons are occasionally dropped by enemies or found along the way in limited quantities. These weapons include single shurikens, throwing stars, triple shurikens, launches 3 stars simultaneously in a spreading platform, and boomerangs. A powerful Kaya weapon, a scroll that expands into a crescent-shaped beam, may be found in later stages. A limited number of invincibility icons also appear throughout the game, which grant a temporary cannonball invincibility effect and allows a turtle to bulldoze their way through the enemies and obstacles. On a side note, boomerangs can be used if the player catches them upon a return. Lastly, if a turtle acquires a new weapon, it will replace the previous alternative weapon. As the game progresses, the turtles must defeat various enemies, navigate traps, search for specific items, and complete certain tasks, such as defusing timed bombs in the underwater area of Stage 2. During gameplay, the turtles collect pizza to replenish health. The amount of health restored is dependent on pizza portions, whole, half, or slice. A player is given a limited number of continue options. Boss confrontations include Bebop, Stage 1, Mid-Boss, Rocksteady, Stage 1 Boss, Mecha Turtle, Stage 3, Big Mouser, Stage 4, the Technodrome, Stage 5, and Shredder, Stage 6. Releases. Regional differences. The game was released for the Family Computer Famicom in Japan a few months earlier than the American NES version under the title Geki Kami Ninja Den, which loosely translates to Legend of the Radical Ninja Turtles. This was the first TMNT product released in the country, predating the Japanese dub of both the first film and the animated series. Subsequent TMNT video games released in Japan kept the franchise's original title. While graphics and gameplay are virtually identical to its NES counterpart, the Japanese localization changed the plot a bit by turning April O'Neil from an acquaintance of the Turtles into Splinter's daughter. The game was released as Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles in all European territories, in line with the renaming of the first cartoon series in those territories. Ports. The game was ported to various home computer platforms in 1990. Konami, under the Ultra Games label, released DOS, Commodore 64, and Amiga versions in North America, while the game was licensed to Microsoft's ImageWorks label for the European market, where DOS, Commodore 64, Amiga, ZX Spectrum, Atari ST, and MSX versions were released. The European Amiga port is different from the North American version. The initial release of the DOS version contains a programming error that creates a gap that is impossible to cross without cheating or a patch. The game was the UK's #1 selling Spectrum game for 6 months between March and August of 1991. It was released in 2007 on the Wii's Virtual Console. It was released for the Wii in Europe and Australia for 500 points, which was later raised to 600 Wii points. In North America, it was released for Wii on April 2nd, 2007 for the price of 600 points. 100 points more than the average NES game, due to a licensing issue. It was the first licensed game to appear on the North American and European Virtual Console. Due to licensing issues, it was later removed from the Wii Shop channel in Japan on January 24, 2012, and in North America and Europe on January 26, 2012. The NES version of the game was re-released as part of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Cowabunga Collection in 2022. Reception. The game was a commercial success. By May 1990, it had sold over 1 million cartridges in the United States. By the end of 1990, the game had sold more than 4 million cartridges worldwide, earning $125 million, $295 million adjusted for inflation for Konami. However, it received a mixed critical reception upon its original NES release. Nintendo Power scored it 4 out of 5 and praised its superb play control and super sharp graphics. The game would be voted as the year's best game by readers as part of the magazine's annual Nintendo Power Awards. Conversely, Electronic Gaming Monthly's panel of 4 reviewers scored it 6, 7, 6, and 4 out of 10, the latter describing it as a disappointment. The ZX Spectrum port was reviewed more positively. Your Sinclair gave the game a 90% rating, praising the game's colorful, cartoonish graphics and movesets, while also criticizing the game's swimming level. When the NES game was re-released on Virtual Console in 2007, it attracted largely negative reviews. GameSpot's Frank Provo gave Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2.7 out of 10, citing the game's very hard difficulty and the game's unpolished and unfun nature as reasons for the rating. Provo also stated that while the game's music is upbeat, the music and the game in general lacks the more recognizable traits of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. Mark Birnbaum of IGN gave Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a 5.5 out of 10, pointing out that the game is dated and only for nostalgic and hardcore fans. Birnbaum stated that the controls were poor, the enemies bland, and the level design and characters were negatives in the game. Both reviewers also cited its poor quality in comparison to Konami's later Turtles NES games, which were not re-released. Internet reviewer and filmmaker James Rolfe, best known for his series Angry Video Game Nerd, released a negative review of the game on YouTube in June of 2006. Rolfe primarily criticized the game for its difficulty, factors of which range from minimal health recovery items, poor placement of set items, large amounts of enemies cluttering the screen, and poor swimming controls, among others. The review itself would go viral. All information here was provided by Wikipedia. And that'll bring a close to this week's episode of the Classic and Current Gaming Podcast. You can check out the podcast in many different ways. We have a video presentation on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify and several other listening podcast platforms as well. Next week, we are going to explore a new game. It's going to be Tekken Advance for the Game Boy Advance, which is the next game to be used for the Retro Gaming League. It's been RX222 from the podcast signing out. Keep on gaming. See you on the next stream. You'll hear me on the next podcast. Everybody have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care, everybody.